thank you to the source of everything in the whole multiverse, the birther of all the multiverse, Ma, Ma, Ma. Thank you to the infinite field of expression of that one underlying singularity of creation. Every expression. Thank you to the ancestors, all the ancestors of everyone watching, all the precious ancestors of humanity, all the alumni of Earth. For their investment. Thank you to the divinity in all of us coming together to bless this live webinar healing session and to bless the whole of mankind, to bless our universe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to your dear, beautiful, adorable hearts. Okay, I'm very excited. We have a very nice, big, thick group today. It's wonderful. All right, so I'm going to close my little magic box that tells me who all's here. All right, and I want to do just a little teeny kind of recap from yesterday. So the areas that we covered: opening the flow of life force in the lower portion of the cord of light. Because a lot of the cosmic information that we receive, I've talked a lot about, you've heard me talk about downloads and they come in through the crown of the head and so forth. Well, that's true. But as I'm going along, there's always more and more refinement, because the more I look into these fine levels of creation, the more I see. So is anybody surprised? So it's what we all do. We're all looking together. So the thing is that what I've noticed is that the knowledge or wisdom that comes in through the crown of the head is more knowledge and wisdom coming from the very subtle levels of creation. So your own divine being speaks to you here through this level, this channel, or this region of the cord of light. Whereas the cosmic information, and there's a lot of cosmic information, guys. There's a lot of just wonderful practical knowledge about the way the universe works and that comes through our connection to Earth, because Earth is this nice, big, beautiful mineral water ball that we're sitting on, air and all its bits and pieces. And our cord of light connects us to the center of the Earth. And the Earth has her own channels, her own cords that connect her to the sun and the moon and the stars and everything, the other planets and other beings. Anyway, the information that comes that is connected to or associated with cosmic knowledge or knowledge about the relative field of creation really comes from the lower. It sort of enters the body from the down up. So there tends to be a spot in the third chakra area that's kind of, it's a place where, as human beings, as a collective, we've tended to kind of regulate that information about the relative. I know a lot of relative information comes through our senses too, but that relative information that comes through the senses is very concrete. It's very specified. And the thing is that we're experiencing our reality both in that very concrete form. Oh, I have a little rock. This one, when I was walking on my little path the other day. So a little rock came to me. So this is so solid. This is a big little solid rock. So the rock, and we look at it and say, well, it's brown. It's about the size of a cookie. And it kind of looks like a cookie. But the thing is that the rock, when we perceive with our senses, we see it's brown and we can feel the texture and so forth. But But there's a part of self that always is looking at everything from a more abstract angle or perspective. So there's the part. Sorry, I'm laughing. I just have to laugh for a second because Marshy would always hold a flower and I'm holding a rock. I should never compare myself to him. He was like a giant, and I'm just expounding on what I already learned from him. But anyway, the point is that we see this little angel, this little being. It has its inner reality as well. Everything has both an outer reality and an inner reality. And what we've done for centuries is we've favored the perception of the outer reality of it. So we'll put the rock down and hold up the rock as it exists energetically. And no, I can actually feel it in my fingers. I can feel its texture. And so there's an inner level of perception of the things on the outer level of creation. Everything has its inner reality and its outer reality. And there's a continuum between the inner reality and the outer reality. In truth, there's a continuum, but there's been a tendency, and I believe it has to do with the nature, the shape of the human nervous system and the way we function, that we tend to separate those two. Instead of seeing and perceiving and experiencing it as a really, really smooth continuum, there's certain places where there are breaks. And one of those places is right in this third chakra area of the body. There's a tendency to hold belief systems right there, between the third and fourth, right between them, in the gap between them. So we did some clearing for that, to clear out that gap, because it's nice. It would be better. It would be more useful and more a clear, realistic, honest, transparent view of or perspective on creation, to see the smooth continuum from the very, very abstract reality of everything to the very concrete reality of everything. So that was number one. And when that cleared out, it also opened the way for the attainment of downloads and a lot more cosmic information to integrate, which helps fill that gap. It helps fill that spot between inner reality and outer reality, so that we start to develop that middle range, you could say. Like a singer, you can sing in your head voice or you can sing in your chest voice, but a lot of people have a little crack in between, right? So it takes a little bit of work on the singer's part to kind of work through that middle range. And how do I blend the superficial perception with the subtler perception like that, and bring the subtle up and bring the concrete down in. So one of the areas we worked with, I'm just letting that kind of settle into the physiologies. One of the areas we worked with was the ability to perceive reality at more like molecular and atomic levels. The human eye is actually capable of perceiving a single photon. Science experiments have been done where they put a person in a vacuum with only like 2 photons, and one of them is absorbed and one of them is perceived as a flash on the retina in the eye. So we can actually literally see subatomic particles. You didn't know you could see subatomic particles, maybe, but you can. We can. Everybody can. We just don't know it. But now we know it. And the thing is that when we look at our world, at our physiologies, at the air, at our whole environment, if we bring awareness down to the atomic level of perception, the playing field is completely leveled. This is no different from this. It's all just atoms. It's all just atoms. So it takes away that whole idea of human beings being this big, powerful master of the, of the whole environment, and I can do whatever I want, and I build these big fancy houses, and I do this and that. And it puts all of us, including our little rock friends, on the same level. We're all living beings. There's life force in this rock. It's such a humble little thing. I love it. Anyway, yeah, there's as much life in the rock as there is in this. And so at that level, it's possible to open the flow of communication between all the different sort of kingdoms of creation. So the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, like that, they can all, there's a atomic level. So work is being done and was done for you on your behalf. And I'm recapping to support the clear, open flow of communication at that level where all the kingdoms unite as one great kingdom of life force in creation. And tying in on that note was the blessing, one of the great blessings, and maybe there are many blessings that come from the Standing Rock Camp in North Dakota, that the establishment or the definition, because all this already exists. Everything that ever will or ever has existed all exists, but it becomes useful when we define it. So what we're defining here is a place of sacred prayer. If we want to go with the American Indian theme, we could call it like a prayer teepee. You know, it's a location, subtle location of creation where all the kingdoms unite, where the language spoken is the language of sacred prayer. And it is such an ideal and perfect time for the coming together of all the kingdoms of creation, because I'm just feeling the energy, and it's a lot of cosmic energy coming in right now, but it's a time of great unification, beautiful unification for the sake of creating and promoting more good for everyone. So on that note, on the note of unification, we come into another area of healing from the previous video, and that is the unification of DNA. Because now we're looking at more, these guys don't have a lot of DNA in them, but we're looking more now at the unification of beings with corporeal forms, and that starts to tie us into today's theme, which is healings for chronic illnesses. So a lot of people, there are two areas to look at here. And we looked at one in detail yesterday and one not so much. So not so much, we'll look at a little more today. But the two areas are chronic illnesses that crop up in the physiology somewhere during the lifetime versus chronic illnesses that one is born with. So chronic illnesses that crop up during the lifetime are, in most cases, physiologically can be followed back to some kind of corruption or damage in the way the body replenishes or renews itself. So say you're born with a very healthy body, and then somewhere along your life you start to have some trouble with, you know, one of the systems of the body or some organs in the body or something. It means that in that organ or in that system, when the body was the cells were dividing and recreating themselves, somehow they made a mistake. Some conflict and confusion cropped up there. A lot of times we go back and we look at it emotionally, and we've done a lot of clearing for the sort of emotional, the foundation that's under that unhealthy replacement of cells. But mechanically, what happens is every time a cell replaces itself, the little telomeres at the ends of the DNA get a little shorter. They're like, if you think of a rope, I could have brought a rope for you to look at. All I have is like wires and stuff, but you can imagine a rope. And it's got like a little binding at one end and a little binding at the other end so that it doesn't unravel. And our DNA are like that. They've got these little protein chains at either end called telomeres that bind the DNA together so that it doesn't, it doesn't unravel and it doesn't self-destruct. It doesn't make mistakes as it's going along. But what happens is the telomeres start out longer, and every time the cell reproduces, the telomere gets a little shorter and a little shorter and a little shorter and a little shorter. And there comes a time when those telomeres get really short. And if the cell reproduces itself again, the telomere, and that's when we start getting some pretty serious breakdown in the evolution of the physiology. So we did a lot of healing for the health of the telomeres. I'm checking everyone's telomeres. Just double checking since I have you all sitting with me today. Just making sure everybody's telomeres got the healing and are good. This is actually a pretty big thing. This healing went through time. We went back early in the evolution of the physiology to protect and heal the telomeres from the earliest days. And also the causal body producing a value or quality of light energy, consciousness, energy, being, which speaks through the atomic level of the physiology, working with the waters of the body and the minerals of the body to evolve those telomeres. It's a delicate process, and it feels like that sacred prayer. That's why I brought up the thing about the location. This location where the kingdoms unite, where we work together. This is like the alchemy of consciousness. That consciousness, when awareness becomes settled down, and if we're looking at our little imaginary diagram from very, very subtle to very concrete, we're going down the, I'm feeling it. It's down in this area. It's down in this area between the causal and spirit level of the physiology that awareness relaxes into that area of its own nature, of its own being, to be able to understand, both comprehend and clearly communicate with this mineralogical level of creation, this atomic molecular level of creation. And the prayer, if we want to call it a prayer, that's offered into this, I can feel it, but it's very abstract. But I know my job is just to tell you what it is anyway, even if it's abstract. So I'm looking for a way to put it into words. There's a lot of information, cosmic information, about immortality. So part of what's happening with this is an inflowing into the physiology from both directions, inflowing information regarding immortality, physical reconstruction to accommodate the ability of the cells to reproduce in such a way that the telomeres remain intact. Part of that research, part of the information about telomeres comes from, this is important, it comes from the study of cancer. Because one of the things about cancer cells is their telomeres do not destroy. The telomeres of cancer cells remain intact, and that's why they just keep growing and growing and growing. So we don't want that. obviously. Now, this is different. This is where a balance is being created between divine being and prana, which is the flow of creation. So divine being supports flow. Divine being and flow moving together give rise to the created manifest reality. But orderliness, that's where the cancer cells are losing. All different kinds of illnesses and problems in the physiology come from a lack of proper ratio between divine flow, which left unto itself can just become like total chaos, and loving orderliness. And if you get too much orderliness, you get kind of this sort of fascist state situation. People can become very depressed because they're only doing what is absolutely safe and absolutely predictable and absolutely, non-challenging in any way. And so the evolution stops. And that's also not, you need both. We need both, but we need them in the right proportion, the right ratio, in order to support fastest evolution. When they get into the right ratio, and what happens is they don't just like, oh, we're out of the right ratio and then we get into the right ratio. They kind of meander into the right weight ratio, kind of like that, sort of, if that makes sense. Because it's not like the ratio itself, like the golden ratio is so it's so balanced in its own nature that in and of itself you can't have physical material creation. So you can't go exactly to that ratio. You can't go exactly to it, but you can go so close that these values are able to increase in their fullness, so that the evolution speeds up. Because look, if say you're a rocket ship and you want to go up and you're meandering across the path of going up, you can't go as fast. But if you're meandering just like a little closer like that, you go up faster, better. So the idea is to align that ratio, to bring the ratio closer, and anything that can be done to kind of enhance or speed up that. And what this will do is this is a antidote for cancer. It's an antidote. Because the problem with cancer is that this other part is not being taken care of. It's out of proportion. It's way too much chaos, not enough of the loving orderliness. And the reason is there was a tendency to recoil from the orderliness, because the understanding that that has to be balanced with this empathy, compassion, tender, much more tender value of loving energy, appreciation, the heart, the lap of mother energy, so that resonation of the mothers at home, mother of creation. And she can sit, we're offering as a group, she sits in that teepee of the sacred prayer, she sits there. If we've got the mother of creation, if we've got mothers at home energy frequency sitting in that location where all the kingdoms unite, then all the communications are life supporting, and the ability to work harmoniously is at maximum capacity. When we started today's session, I was feeling a lot of bliss. And the bliss is one of the key factors, one of the feeds that goes into promoting ideal health. When the tissues are full of the feeling of joyfulness, it's much easier for them to function in a healthy manner and economically. And it's interesting that the work that we're doing right now, this one that I was trying to describe, this download that I was trying to describe, it's moving because it's being held in our group. And our group is quite big, not only people-wise, it's big, but there's a collecting of the energies from the multiple kingdoms, even at the beginning before this webinar began. So it's expanding, this, like a gift, like a flower at the feet of God, is expanding to the more cosmic realms, because it's the cosmic realms that have been responsible for bringing all this information in the first place, right? So naturally, spontaneously, it reflects back with so much gratitude and so much lovely, earthly nature of compassion and sweetness. Because, you know, one of the things about Earth is there's really, really a lot of sweetness on Earth, a lot. And so as it's offered back to the stars, into our galaxy, with gratitude, we're speaking. It's collectively speaking. We're collectively putting out a wave of softness and sweetness and openness of perception and willingness to receive what is required to produce the effects that are intended from the level of divine being to occur here on Earth. We can do it. We know we have a fancy cosmic event coming up on the 26th. And it's interesting for those who are followers of astrology or so, then they're aware that there's this relationship between Mars and one of the nodes of the moon, K2. But for those who aren't interested in astrology, there are those who are interested in astronomy are seeing something coming. They see this wave coming from outside of our solar system. And the last time I was thinking, the last time one of these waves hit, what was the difference between then and now? And the answer that came back was, it's very blaringly obvious. There's been a huge, huge wake up on the level of consciousness in the family of humanity. So it should be no surprise, despite the outward appearance of this cosmic event, that the result will be further huge waking up of humanity on the level of consciousness. That's why what we're doing is we're setting the ground and preparing right now by establishing position in this place where the kingdoms unite. So it's a cosmic location. It's a cosmic location. When there's a big change or something that happens that affects the rocks and affects the waters and affects the people and the animals and the plants, it's good that we're all united, that we're all working together in humblest dedication and devotion to the highest good and protection for everyone and adoration and being held securely in the lap of Mother, where whatever happens is really okay. And it's expanding. It's like we found a little crack. This is one of the differences between chronic illnesses and short-term illnesses, is that short-term illnesses, the underlying resonation, imbalanced resonation, is it's not so consistent. Whereas with long-term chronic illnesses, there's a kind of consistency in the underlying resonation. There are no cracks in it. There are no spaces for the light to seep in. So we have to create an opening, and we create an opening by using the same technology that maintains the consistency. So what that means is, if we use cancer as the example, that the cancer cells are kind of immortal, invincible cells because their telomeres don't deteriorate when they reproduce, then we, utilizing that technology, heal all the cells in the body whose telomeres have deteriorated over the course of time. We rise up to meet that, but with the light of healing as the fundamental resonation or principle behind it. And the healing of being on the lap of Mother. I want to go back into the prayer that I heard in the prayer circle place. The thing about consciousness is it can move into the various areas of the physiology with a kind of specific intention behind it. So attention moves with intention. That's an old principle, right? But in this case, there are a couple of things. One is, I talked a little bit, I want to actually answer a question that came in. Oh, another question just came in too. Cool. 2 questions at once. One of the things is, I talked about how you can have this orderliness, and then you can also have flow, and it's almost like chaos. It's like, but this sort of chaotic flow. The thing about chaotic flow is that it's only perceived as chaotic. It's only deemed a problem when we don't have a means to deal with it, when we haven't figured out how to position ourselves so that we're comfortable with it. So, and that's the role of this orderliness side. So once we figured out, maybe a situation or circumstance comes up that's a challenge, once we figured out how to deal with the challenge, then it no longer falls into the category of being a chaotic problem thing. It falls into the category of being combined with orderliness in such a way that we enjoy evolution in that area. So one person asked a question, who's with us today. Oh, more questions coming in. Oh, this is so exciting. Okay, one person asked the question, what do we do about that period of life? It's kind of he described as an ashram period, where one is kind of under the influence of austerity and lack of material affluence, abundance, and fullness. And it tends to, make one stuck. So that what's happening there is it's a little bit of an over emphasis on the orderly side, right? Oh, I just realized this is a Vulcan thing, right? Or were they talking Vulcan or something? Anyway, sorry. Okay. Sorry, just struck me. All right. So too much on this orderly side. So what it means is to unblock, and this has to do with the unblocking that we did in the 3rd chakra, to allow a little bit more of the element of the unknown to move in. When I go into silence, that's what I'm doing. I'm just stepping back and I'm just saying, thy will be done. Whatever your beautiful collective and your beautiful God presences want to bring into this healing, let that come in. Because bringing in the unknown, as scary as that may be, supports evolution in a huge way. That's what energy healing is about. It's not about the individual doing anything. It's about, from the level of individuality, folding back to the divine, folding back to the divine, folding back, letting the divine, letting the Department of God take over and do it. So what happens often in that ashram period, and I'm saying this to everyone because we've all had at least some incarnations or some experiences or times in our reality where we were on a very kind of controlled, austere path. And the reason that happens is because one goes through a period where it's too much on this side, too much over emphasis on the chaos level, because once one realizes, well, that's where the evolution is brought in, so I'm going for that. I'm on that horse. But the problem is that if the horse only has 2 legs, it falls down and then you get hurt. And so that's what happens if it goes too much on the chaos side, is it's like too much and it's overwhelming. And then evolution actually stops because individuality gets overwhelmed. So then the individual pulls back to the other side and goes, okay, I just want to be in an orderly place where everything is predictable and I know what's going to happen before it happens and there aren't any surprises and I have all the resources I need to meet every possible circumstance. And what can happen for some people, and often happens when a person's in that phase, a lifetime you choose to be a monk or something like that, or even periods within a lifetime, is that vow. We make those vows to ourselves, just between ourselves and God. You make that vow. I promise to myself, I will only do what feels completely safe and completely predictable and completely easy and completely okay. Then you're on the horse with only has the other two legs. I'm looking for where the vows. For a lot of people, the vows are in the heart. And for a lot of people, the vows are between the heart and the throat, in this area where this little thingy is here, right in that area, for a lot of people. But it seems to interestingly reflect up into some kind of deep levels of the brain. It affects this area. In the last couple webinars, we were working with the dopaminergic pathways, and it affects those little organs. I still haven't memorized the names. They're these long, complicated little organs inside the brain that have different names. But note to my team, we can include a picture, a diagram of the dopaminergic pathways in the letter that goes out to everybody so that people can see it. Because it does help to see it where it is, but it affects that area. That promise to the self affects that area. And creates habits and vicious cycles, and it creates a tendency to kind of recoil or self-sabotage when the creation, which is constantly bringing from all directions everything you could ever possibly need or want or desire, it causes the individuality to be blind to it, not see it, or if it comes to recoil or self-sabotage from it. So those habits are clearing, and the blockages, all this subtle material up here in the heart, neck, throat area, clearing. And then the pathways, the very delicate little pathways between this area and this inner brain area. It's all local neighborhood stuff, A lot of fear is clearing. And there's a tendency to want to put oneself in the hands of an expert. So, and to say, well, you do it for me. If I have to do something hard, maybe you'll do it for me, or you'll help me do it, or something like that. And the reality is that that's not satisfying to do it that way. And it doesn't make you strong. It doesn't make you invincible. It doesn't make you immortal to let somebody else do the work. So that is an old pattern. It goes for the generations. And it's a good thing we were blessing our ancestors before this all started, because it's a very common, it goes all the way back to the early times of about 10,000 BC or something, when with the evolution of agriculture and then specialization in culture and society and so forth, you start getting people who specialize in different areas. And so, I don't want to bake the bread. I want that guy over there. He can bake for everybody, and whatever. Somebody else will make the weapons or whatever. It's not that it's wrong for us to live in a society where tasks are doled out and people specialize. Everybody has a dharma. What's wrong is to think that any of that is outside yourself. Even, I don't know if the word wrong is the right word. I think wrong is the wrong word. I don't think there's anything that's really wrong. But what I'm saying is, if there's someone in my society who conducts an orchestra, that means, even if I'm not a conductor, that means that there's somewhere inside myself where that conductor has his inner reality. Remember the rock? We were talking about the rock and how it has its outer reality, and then it also has its inner reality. Outer and inner reality. If within myself, the conductor isn't really accessible or I can't recognize, then it's not so likely that I'm going to go to the concert and watch the conductor conduct. But whatever I'm able to connect between my inner reality and my outer reality, then it's like one has created a channel of a flow. That's where the prana comes in, right? The flow of being can move into that orderly area to receive the blessings and the benefits of that thing. So if I don't have time to bake bread, there's some structure in my consciousness that is able to express that or experience that value enough that I can at least attain the bread. Again, what we're doing is we're moving into this area of the alchemy of consciousness. How do we manifest? Yesterday I was saying, what is the difference between, these wonderful yogis who can manifest things? They just they manifest them like that, whereas we have to go to the store. I guess that's why I keep pulling up this rock, because this rock just manifested for me. I mean, I did happen to be outside, and I did happen to be walking in an alley, which is a really good place to find rocks, but there weren't any other rocks in the alley, anything like this little cookie rock. Not even close. And I walked down that alley a bunch of times, and I never saw this rock. I don't know. It just manifested. So the inner reality and the outer reality. So on the level of inner reality, there's certain areas of the nervous system, the brain, that are responsible for going in and viewing the inner reality. Thank you. We're coming back to this. I'm always, as we're going along here, kind of asking back into that sacred prayer thing, because I see it, of all the different areas that we're looking at today, it's one of the areas that's got a huge untapped potential that I would like to have more come out of that. So the way in which we identify the inner levels of reality and creation, there's a purification taking place right now. I just have to be in the moment. Purification, purification, purification in the actual brain itself. It has to do with that thing that we just cleared, that this area where those sort of self-made promises and vows, is that I will always be obedient, and I will always be in poverty, and I will always be celibate, and I will always, all those, having to do with the austerities and having everything under control and predictable. And this area of the brain, because there's so much fear right in there that, if stuff, sorry, change position. And wanting, well, Ma, you do it. And we can say, Ma, you do it, but Ma only does it when we are in a state of union with Ma, when we are understanding our relationship so intimately that there's no gap or break between the inner understanding, experience, and perception of the wholeness of all creation and the relative level of creation. So we're looking into that field. And the thing about the sacred prayer is, it's and it's different at every moment, right? The prayer is a impulse of creative intelligence, which is ever flowing in this particular location at a very deep level of creation, which supports a very intense, profound, only the highest vibration of life-supporting impulses of creative intelligence. Only the impulses that are deemed just as precious and as valuable to the minerals in creation as they are to the humans in creation. You can't make a prayer in that place that's like selfish. You can't. They're only like the most pure, the most life-supporting. I'm looking at that, feeling in that space. So just rich. It's rich. And it is, because it's communicating in all of our physiologies at a very kind of fine atomic level. It's opening the pathways of communication between conscious mind, conscious thinking, conscious ability, and individuality, and the subtler elements of our physiology, the waters. And I did a lot yesterday about the waters and the minerals in the body. So you can go back and look if you want more detail on that. But it's extremely important that we are at a level of communication now with that level of our own nature and reality. Not only is it very supportive, because it's very supportive of our ability to manifest anything, because when we're communicating with a rock as easily as we can communicate with a family member, then you can you can ask a family member, oh dear, would you take out the trash? You can say to the rock, oh my dear, can we manifest, gold or whatever, whatever you want to manifest. Can we restructure? Basically, the bottom line is it's not so much about manifesting gold. It's that the mineralogical level of creation stands for this area, the orderliness factor. The orderliness factor. So what we bring as human beings into that area, into that sacred prayer, is our love, compassion, empathy, gratitude, sweetness. It's flowing. It's flowing. That sweetness is irresistible. It's irresistible to the stones. They love it. They may not have the ability to talk with mouths like we do, and they don't have hands and fingers like we do, but they have consciousness like we do. And their consciousness responds to our love, but they are the embodiment of orderliness. And all the 2 pounds of minerals in the body are the embodiment of orderliness. And their ability to work together and to interact, to structure together in an orderly fashion, is based upon that sweetness, gratitude, and love, which is in the waters of the body. So this flowing, the flow of consciousness, the waters of the body. I want to answer a lot of questions have come in, guys. I got to get to questions. I love you. That was beautiful. There's, of course, more. Okay, hi. Wondering about a tendency to have a weak nervous system in a family would have to do with telomeres or just a nutritional deficiency. I would say it's more than a nutritional deficiency. I'm looking. And what I'm seeing is that the nutritional deficiency is a byproduct of the underlying imbalance. This individual, this person that is being asked about, is dealing with a really big split. So instead of the ratio being in proportion and very close to the ideal ratio, what they're doing is they're going like this. They're oh, it's totally chaotic and I can't stand it and it's crazy, or oh, it's completely controlled and I'm not even going to talk to anybody in my family because I don't want to have anything happen that's out of my control, or oh, it's and back and forth like that. So this person is experiencing, oh, do you like that? All we had to do is look at out of control and chaotic, and all of a sudden the camera goes, well, I can't handle it. Anyway, it's okay. It just shows that's the alchemy of consciousness, right? You put your attention on something and it just manifests. This person in your family, first of all, they need a download to identify where that perfect ratio is. Then they need the support. They're just getting this. As I'm saying it, they're getting it. And everybody's getting, we're tweaking for all of you because you guys already got this. Some of you are already experts in the first place, so what the heck. But so first they need the identification, the download specific information. Where is the balance between out of control and in control? Second thing is the resources to get out of this, whoa, I can't find the middle of the road thing, to getting into more of a central flow like that. What I'm seeing is the healing that came from yesterday's session for the nadis. It was near the end of the session. You might want to go back and review that because the nature of flow is that it's not in a really straight line anyway. Healthy waters of the body, healthy plasma in the body, and needs to meander. It needs to meander some in order to be kind of like lively and create like a really healthy, interesting environment for the body to reside. The reason that person's body isn't absorbing the nutrition in a healthful manner is because both hormones and enzymes are players in the digestive process, and they have a big hormonal imbalance in the physiology as well. And of course, the hormones come back to the relationship between the chemicals in the body and the flow. They regulate emotions, right? So that person is receiving. And for anybody else in this session who's receiving, especially because for the lady in question, this has gotten worse since menopause. So to support all the ladies in our community, our little online session today, and men and ladies, to support a healthier balance, hormonal balance in the physiology. Also, this is a very important point, that I talked earlier about how there's certain aspects of the brain which are responsible for the inner vision, and seeing the energy reality or the subtle reality of the world around us. This is very much associated with the hypothalamus pituitary area of the brain. And when things get out of balance in there between those two organs, it's very common for an excessive amount of cortisol to be produced in the physiology. So these are our inner eyes, The thalamus and the hypothalamus are like the sun and the moon. They're like the two inner eyes. The thalamus is looking out, is involved or engaged with the information that comes in through the dense, gross senses. And the hypothalamus is involved with all the inner feeling, not just the inner feeling like what's going on inside my body physically, but also inner feeling, especially as you get up into the pituitary area and the pineal gland up. That whole area is this very interesting point in the physiology responsible for the whole picture being revealed. So for everyone, we're right there in that area and just receiving the grace and blessings of divine being to work through this area of the physiology, to awaken and open up, to heal, and to support the enhanced evolution of these organs in the center of the brain for the sake of a very complete and smooth perception of our world from the very finest to the very densest level with no breaks and no gaps. It's requiring a little, it's interesting how these things come up. It's requiring a little bit of a sense of indifference. It's necessary. It's necessary because if we don't have the indifference, it's the nuances, the subtle nuances of the relationship between the inner perception to the outer perception. It's so rich and it's so beautiful and it's so luscious and it's so moving that it can be, again, we can get over onto the chaos side. Whoa, the chaos went over the order. It can get over to the chaos side and it can be too much. So that little bit of indifference, and it's very interesting. I'm looking at that little indifference in this model. This model that I put up, this Vulcan model, because we know that the orderliness really needs some softness along with it in order to modify it sufficiently so that always the order is there, but it's there in the most loving way. But the indifference is very necessary because this earth world, this cosmic laboratory where souls have the freedom to explore the idea of having a deplorable life if they want, or anything, of being a mass murderer. If you want to be a mass murderer, well, you can go to Earth, you can do that on Earth. So there needs to be a little bit of indifference in there so that I know we all want to be on the highest and we would like to very much move the energy frequency of Earth over just a little bit so that those kind of choices aren't really options on Earth. It would be better. Let us consider that as we are healing the limbic system and bringing in this little element of slight indifference, that indifference towards negativity element. So that, and also indifference towards any experience that really floods a lot of energy into the amygdala, because that's what causes the feeling that it's all the intense emotion. It causes the intense emotion. So that little bit of indifference. So it's a tool. It's a tool. And I'm seeing support from the kingdoms of the self. When I say that multiple kingdoms, they're all the self. It's all the self. It's all the self. And that aspect structures at this level, the physiology. And for those of you who've been with me for a while, please forgive me, but it became evident to me, even though all the names I give to the different layers of the physiology are arbitrary anyway, because it doesn't really matter what you call it. The important thing is that it exists. But I switched the names, and I switched my understanding of the subtlety and the density of these two levels of the physiology. Before I was calling causal and spirit, now I'm calling spirit and causal. And I explained in more detail why I did that in yesterday's session. But the important thing is it's the energy at the spirit level of the physiology, which is appealing or applying itself to upgrade the intelligence of the amygdala, which is the pain center in the brain. It's in the limbic system. It's up in that area where those inner sensory organs reside. Because when the amygdala has that tool of indifference, the amygdala itself can find the balance, the ideal ratio balance between chaos and order. That's the spot where the balance, that's the responsible party. The amygdala is the responsible party for maintaining the recognition of where is the balance, and has always been. And in the case of the lady who asked the question and her family member, that's where it's out of balance. So for everybody, thanks to this dear woman who's sacrificing her life to be an unhappy person, all of us are being blessed with this healing to bring a level of intelligence, like a download of intelligence, which actually literally reconfigures the amygdala so that it is a more orderly organ. It functions more economically, but most importantly, it functions with a higher level of intelligence. Higher level of intelligence, so that you as an individual can maintain stability regardless of where the path meanders, whether we're having extra chaos coming in so we're evolving faster, or whether we have more orderliness coming in so that we can handle that. Nice question. Thank you. I love you guys. So beautiful, so adorable. Okay, another question. Question from Europe. Is the telomeres always involved in chronic illness, or in just some, or just in some? The answer is, thanks for this question. And I hadn't even asked myself that question, so I'm just going to ask the question to Divine Being and see what Divine Being has to say. The answer immediately back, no, it's not involved in all chronic illness. However, it is involved in most chronic illnesses, and also a lot of other diseases as well. A lot, and particularly any age-related illnesses. So, those that tend to come on later in age, such as arthritis, or heart conditions, or diabetes, or other sort of conditions like that. The telomeres, the fact that the cells, when they reproduce themselves, they're not reproducing, there's some corruption comes into that process. The other kind of illness that crops up are when an individual has brought the illness in this lifetime. They brought it with them. Okay. Also, the same person asked another question too. So I think I read kind of slowly. Please forgive me, because I want to take in every nuance, but I think I'll answer the first question, then I'll answer the second question. Thank you for asking. And that is when the soul, before taking the incarnation, decides, well, in this lifetime, I'm going to come in with Down syndrome. Or in this lifetime, I'm going to come in with a gynecological disorder of some kind, something that's just, people in my family dealt with for decades, and I'm coming in with it also. Propensity towards a certain kind of, imbalance in some organ or some system. Then when the cells reproduce, they keep reproducing with the same imbalance in them. So the other thing is that even if a person acquires an illness later on in their lives, to some degree or another, that is karma. And like we saw with the last question, the answer for rebalancing karma is one of the most beautiful and life-supporting ways is to offer one's own healing into the collective, and to allow the healing that was needed for that one individual to bless many, many people. It's okay. So we're going back in now to this question about the illness and the long term. I know this person asked the question, and I'm looking at their specific illness, their specific concern, basically. Because this is a really, okay. So this particular concern that this lady has, by the way, is shared by other people in my group. It's in the group today, and that's a chemical sensitivity and sensitivity to electromagnetic frequencies. And we all are sensitive to chemicals and electromagnetic frequencies to some degree or another. But the work that we just did with the amygdala is going to help a lot. Because the thing about when the amygdala was out of balance, it's like it's larger than life. it gets very big and very sort of extra hypersensitive like that. And then any little thing, it's like, oh, it's on that little thing, it's on that little thing. So when the amygdala is put in the position of, number one, having the tool of indifference. So the amygdala has a choice. You have a choice, but your amygdala has a choice. Before, it felt like out of control. My amygdala doesn't have a choice. My amygdala is so big and it's so hypersensitive that even a little bit of some too much light or something, and then I start to feel a headache or I start to feel uncomfortable. Is it a surprise that we feel it in the head? Because that's where the imbalance was. So the amygdala didn't know it had a choice. It thought it was subject to the whims of the rest of the physiology. It thought it was not able to think independently. Every part, this tooth right here, this one can think independently. This eyebrow right here, you can. And think independently doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to be a renegade and go off on my own and to heck with the rest of the body, I'm out of here. No, it's that each tiny little aspect of the physiology has something of infinite value to offer to the wholeness of the being. Just like each little individual antenna of the universe has something of value to offer, of infinite value to offer to the wholeness of creation. That's why we exist. That's why the divine being source of creation made each one of us little antennas, all its little antennas, because it needed this antenna and it needed this antenna and this one, all of them. The amygdala is on both sides. It not only is being uplifted and supported to the position of being able to think for itself, it's given the responsibility for deciding where's the center ratio, where's the relationship between chaos and order at any given moment in the meandering course of the flow of awareness through that landscape. I'm looking, new information coming, because when the river flows, and I talked more about this in the last video, and note to my team, we could include the link to the video about the scientists who studied water, which I made more reference to in yesterday's session, but it was a lovely thing. It's a long thing and I've only watched part of it, but it's nice information you might like if you like water. That when the waters of the body, and that's another healing that came in yesterday's session, which also everybody today, all of you are getting today as well. I can only say so much though. So we got healings going on. We've got Dorothy talking about this and that, everything happening at once here, but we'll fill in all the gaps. You will get all the gaps filled in, no worries. Waters of the body are extremely healthy waters, life, flowing with life force, flowing with prana, and they naturally create an internal environment that's healthier for your gut bacteria, healthier for your healthy gut bacteria, healthier for all the elements and structures, healthier for the cells, healthier for the subcellular structures, healthier for the minerals and the nutrients that are moving around in the physiology that are responsible for the well-being of the body and the health. So this further refinement of the healing for the waters and the physiology, this balance that the amygdala maintains between chaos and order, or it's like, you could say the amygdala is like the caretaker or the archivist, holding that. And also there's a relationship between that ratio and also the alignment in the cord, cord of light that runs through the physiology too. Oh, this is interesting, you guys, because the ratio changes. Oh, who would have guessed? New information. It changes because we are constantly moving through different areas of space-time in our little bodies on our Earth, in our solar system, and different areas of space-time demand or require a slightly different relationship or proportion in the relationship between the chaos and order. It moves slowly enough that to us it doesn't look like it moves that much. But that's another reason why the meandering is important. Oh, and that's another reason why the meandering has to follow a kind of even though the meandering of the flow in itself is a naturally chaotic thing, right? That it has to flow within with certain constraints of order, because if the ratio is also meandering, okay, so the ratio itself is meandering, and then you're meandering around the ratio like that, then it means that if the ratio is going that way and you're going that way, you could end up in some difficult situation. Hence the lady in the previous question. Or if the ratio is moving this way and you're going this way, then you actually come more back into alignment. Oh, that is so interesting. So this is a little complicated, but it's interesting enough. What I'd like to do is I'd like to just offer it to Divine Being. Also, we're running out of time, and we've got 2 more questions, and I want to answer them both. So I think we have to offer that. Oh, this next question is simple. Are the telomeres involved in the illnesses that I have? And that is, I hope you don't mind, since I'm not giving your name, but I am saying that the illness is, hyperchemical sensitivity and also sensitivity to EMFs. I'm looking at how much it's involved. No, it's not that much involved with it. It's not. You're basically, the health of the body, overall health, is quite good. And as far as like really healthy cells and healthy cell division, you look wonderful. You're beautiful. No, it's more to do with this other thing that has to do with the balance in the physiology of the relationship between orderliness and chaos. That will, in the long run, affect your telomeres. And down the road, it can, my dear, it can make the telomeres deteriorate more quickly. And down the road, it could give rise to more of the sort of illnesses that arise from the cells becoming corrupted as they reproduce. At the moment, it's not. But this is why this is a good time to heal that in the physiology and to get you into a state of perfect balance. Then you don't have to deal with that further on down the road. The prayer, the sacred prayer, is always a reflection of divine intention. So in that level of being, and that place in the self, down here at the spirit level, the physiology, where all the kingdoms of creation are on equal footing, the playing field has been leveled, and the communication flow is wide open. That is the codes that are responsible for the ratios are contained. So everybody's receiving this. It's a byproduct of a kind of organic interaction amongst all the levels of creation, and that at that place of self, at that field of self, at that level of consciousness. And it doesn't stop. Whether you're consciously aware of it, all the clearing we did for the perception to open up so we can see from the very finest to the very densest, that's going to help the prayer to maintain. I'm using that word, and maybe I have to be careful using religious words because I don't think of what I'm doing as religious so much, and I know a lot of us have connotations associated with that, but if it helps at all, I'm thinking of it in more of an American Indian sense of the word sacred prayer, walking in a sacred manner like that, in alignment with divine intention, and the prayer actually comes from the divine level of creation. Here's another question, last question. Curious about what the vow that would make one recoil and self-sabotage is, which you just talked about. These are the vows that are taken. This is when we were talking about that kind of ashram phase that people go through. These are the vows that people take when they have had it up to here with chaos and impulses from the environment that seem out of control, and they don't feel like they have the resources to deal with them. And therefore they want to just live very simply, just without a lot of confusion or conflict or complication. And so people will take vows deep inside themselves of poverty, of chastity, of obedience, of sometimes even people will take vows of self-deprecation. You know, like back in the Middle Ages, the monks would flagellate themselves. Is that they'd hit themselves with whips because they felt that that was like their cross that they bore, that if I beat myself up enough, other people won't come along and beat me up too, or like that. And most of us have, if not had whole lifetimes devoted to a very simple, orderly, non-complicated existence, at least periods of lifetimes. And then there are always the rocks, very simple existence, very orderly, very orderly. See, you or me, we'd be kind of depressed if we lived like a rock. That's why we got to give the rocks lots of love, so they don't get depressed. No, they won't get depressed. Their systems aren't designed for that. Sorry, just teasing. Anyway, all right, so today we did a review of the healings that came through in yesterday's webinar, and then we moved into new territory and did, there was a whole healing for the internal limbic system area, and there were more openings in a way in which the consciousness maintains evenness from the very subtle to the denser levels of perception. It was a lot about refinement and expansion of the capacity to perceive at deep levels of being. There were downloads received today from the cosmos with a vast body of information that came in based on how to structure our own attention and intention to produce a level of relationship with the finer realms of creation. And here I'm talking about dimensions such as atomic and molecular levels of creation and even subatomic levels of creation, so that the intention, the attention and intention can flow in such a way that the manifestation of desire is very fast. And there was a whole healing that took place for the ability to communicate with all these fine levels, the finer inner kingdoms. Yesterday I was calling it the inside tribe, because you have all the tribes coming together there at the Standing Rock Camp, all these tribes that have been, some of them at odds for hundreds of years, they're coming together as a union, and we are all coming together at the work that they're doing over there is supporting the work that we're doing over here. It's now the second largest city in North Dakota is the Oseti camp. So it's big. This is 11,000 people are coming together as if meditating all day long, sort of ish, in their sacred prayer space all day long. So it's like an eye open, it's like a spiritual eye open, beaming to the creation. And then here in Fairfield, we have our little spiritual eye, and in Skelmersdale, there's a little spiritual eye, and they're ashrams, they're little ones. The Brahmastan of India, there's little ones all over the world, but with more eyes open, we can see more. So that's what we're doing in this session ultimately, is we're coming together for a kind of joining in a symbiotic relationship so that we all see more. Because when we see more, we know more. And when we know more, we can do more. So that's what's happening. Anyway, That's my recap. So, little heart. Okay. So thank you everybody for being with me today. It is very powerful and very exciting to be doing this webinar at this time. We're almost at the longest day of the year. And so we have so much access to cosmic information at this time of the year. Most of our day, our 24-hour period, is facing out into those cosmic regions of creation where the vast story of our creation resides and shares at this time of year. And plus is a very nice big full webinar. The webinars have been gradually, organically increasing in numbers. Big shout out to everybody who's on the webinar subscription program. Thank you to all of you for joining with that, because we're making progress faster. That's orderliness, right? Because if we're there every time and then we get the information in a sequential fashion, and we're able to move faster and able to contribute in a more concrete way and everything. So it's just beautiful. Thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate our time together, and it's already come to an end. Chronic illness for the whole life, and we have 1 hour to deal with it. So we did our best. We deal with it the best we can, 1 hour, 20 minutes here. But we'll keep working on it. You are all in my hearts. And whenever anything comes up that I think, oh, that would be good, I'll pass it on to you because I love you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to close the meeting now. Goodbye. Have a wonderful holiday season. Wonderful, brilliant new year. May the new year bring us all to a whole new level of experience and understanding and health and all that is good.